I had a sudden realization about my sister and just how unlucky she really is. I have a great idea, I said with a grin. What idea? Someone asked. You see, I replied. Jessica, my younger sister, strutted up to the front of the room wearing a fancy wedding dress. She grabbed the microphone, turned to the guests, and with a smug smile, announced, "Would anyone here like to take my sister off our hands? She isn't exactly well educated, and she's not getting any younger, is she?" After saying that, Jessica looked over at me, still smirking, as if she didn't realize how awful her words were. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Guests started murmuring, and some shot Jessica cold looks, but Jessica didn't seem to notice and grabbed the microphone again, urging me to sell myself to the room, especially since there were plenty of handsome doctors around. My name is Emily Nichols. I'm a 29-year-old, average-looking woman who works as a lawyer. There's really nothing remarkable about me, except that I managed to become an attorney straight out of middle school. Jessica, who is 2 years younger, is attractive and outgoing, so she's always gotten special treatment from our family. Unlike Jessica, I was never the focus of our parents' attention. No matter how hard I studied or how good my grades were, I couldn't compete with Jessica's natural charm. Over time, I got tired of trying to earn my family's love and decided to focus on building my own path, even if it meant giving up on ever being truly loved by them. I poured all my effort into studying, hoping to prove my worth. Gaining knowledge made me feel more confident, and I hoped that my success in school would eventually earn me some praise from my parents. Late into the night, I would sit at my desk, studying hard. Throughout middle school, I always stayed at the top of my class and outperformed other students in every test, but not once did my parents praise me. Instead, I often felt like they were disappointed with my grades. It's not enough to just be at the top. You need to get perfect scores in every subject, my mother would say. Even scoring 95% in science isn't perfect. But this test was really hard, I tried to explain. Excuses, she replied coldly. If you keep making excuses, you'll never reach true success. All I could do was quietly say, I'm sorry. No matter how hard I worked, my efforts were never good enough. Anything less than 100% was seen as failure. But more than my parents' coldness, what hurt the most were my sister Jessica's words. Oh, you're getting scolded again, sister, Jessica would say, entering my room uninvited and smirking at my report card. It's sad that you get such good grades and still get in trouble. I get praised for just barely passing. Did you come here just to say that? I asked, frustrated. I was just worried you might be feeling down, she said, pretending to care. If you were really worried, you wouldn't talk to me like this, I retorted. That's your problem, she replied. You're so distant and cold, that's why Mom and Dad don't love you. Jessica's icy stare made her contempt for me clear. She laughed, and soon I heard her cheerful laughter with our parents from the living room. I should have been used to this by now, but the sadness was too much to hold back, and tears began to roll down my cheeks. I kept telling myself that I didn't need my parents' approval or Jessica's hurtful words, but even with that resolve, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. I held my crumpled report card tightly, feeling determined once more to break free from my family's harsh environment. I decided that excelling in my studies would be my way out, so I threw myself into my schoolwork even harder. Then, one autumn day, my father made an unexpected announcement. Emily, you won't be going to high school. You need to start looking for a job instead, he said flatly. I was stunned. Why would you say that? I asked, confused. We won't be investing in you any further. If you want to go to high school, you'll have to pay for it yourself. If you can't, then you need to give up on it, he replied coldly. But I'm still in middle school. How am I supposed to find a job to cover high school expenses? I tried to argue, but my father wouldn't listen. We've decided to focus our money on Jessica. We can't afford to spend more on you, he said firmly. My heart sank. It felt as if the world around me turned gray, and my mother and sister looked at me with barely hidden smiles. as if they were happy about the decision. At that time, I didn't know that there were options, like scholarships or schools with tuition waivers, that could have helped me. Back then, all I felt was crushed because my path to further education seemed blocked. From that day, my passion for learning faded, my teachers' praise about my grades felt empty, and my family's complete lack of interest in my education drained all my motivation. My chances of going to high school felt impossible, so I moved on to the next phase of my life, working at a local factory. As soon as I graduated, I was still too young to live on my own and support myself, so until I turned 18, I worked as hard as I could. Most of my salary went to my family, and I saved the little bit I was able to keep for my future. Those days were tough, like trying to crawl through a long, dark tunnel. Finally, on my 18th birthday, I left that house. I left a letter for my family, and with a heavy but determined heart, I walked away from the home I known. Afterward, it was as if I had never existed. To feel no calls, no letters, just silence. At first, living on my own was painful, and the loneliness felt heavy, but over time, work kept me busy, and the stress I felt at home disappeared. For the first time, I felt a mental clarity and peace I'd never experienced. With this new freedom, my passion for learning reignited. I started studying again, going over the basics carefully and feeling joy in learning once more. Soon, I moved on to high school textbooks and began reading a lot. During this journey, I discovered a deep interest in law books, sparking a fascination with the legal field. Even though I had only finished junior high, the idea of becoming a lawyer, though distant, became my new goal. By chance, I learned about a system that allowed people with limited education to still take the bar exam. This discovery gave me hope, and I became even more determined to study. I used every free moment, whether at home or during work breaks, to memorize legal terms. Even at lunch, I would review my notes as I ate. At work, most of my co-workers were older, around my parents' age. Seeing my dedication, they encouraged me. Finally, at 23, I passed the exam. I left my job at a factory and joined a top law firm. After about 4 years of training, I opened my own law practice. Now, I work happily as a legal consultant for a hospital. Sometimes, I wonder how my parents would react if they knew I had become a lawyer, but I haven't reached out to them, and I feel that I may never do so. However, an unexpected reunion with my family happened sooner than I thought. One evening after work, I received a message from my younger sister, Jessica. She was getting married next month to a doctor, and they wanted me to attend. Even though I hadn't seen Jessica or my parents in years, I felt that, as her sister, I should go. I replied, agreeing to attend. She quickly responded with the details and a reminder not to forget a wedding gift, which made me smile a bit. I decided that I would use this event to reconnect with my family, even if it was only briefly. On the day of the wedding, I wore a carefully chosen blue dress and arrived at the venue. After checking in, I found my seat in the family section, where my parents were already sitting. "You have some nerve showing up here. Doing well with your factory wages, are you?" my father remarked coldly. "Yes," my mother added, "introducing someone like her as family doesn't reflect well on us as parents." My mother added with disdain, "Jessica shouldn't have invited someone like you." My father continued, "I told them that, but they insisted on getting the celebration money anyway. They spoke as if I wasn't even there, discussing me openly with no regard for my feelings. Any hope I had that reconnecting my east tension between us quickly vanished, crumbling within me. Both my parents avoided speaking to me entirely. Looking around the venue, I recognized some familiar faces on the groom's side. Haven't I seen that person somewhere before? I wondered, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. Trying to place the connection, I looked up the groom's name and my suspicion turned to certainty. This connection felt like an odd twist of fate, but I decided to keep my emotions in check and focus on quietly getting through the day. The ceremony went on, with the bride and groom making a glamorous entrance. Guests on the groom's side shared warm words and entertainment, lightening the atmosphere. As the event moved from dinner to photo taking, my parents got up without even glancing my way, and went to the front to be closer to Jessica and her new husband. Jessica, beaming with joy, stayed close to them in every photo, her smile never fading. Trying to ignore the scene in front of me, I focused on my meal. But then, unexpectedly, Jessica approached me. She wore a smile, but there was something in her eyes that hinted at more than excitement. "Big sis, it's been such a long time, hasn't it? Are you happy to be here together like this?" she asked lightly. I nodded, managing to keep my tone polite. "Yes, the banquet food is really wonderful." With a sarcastic smile, she replied, "I bet you don't get such luxurious food at that factory you work at, do you? You should be grateful for this opportunity." Something inside me felt like it was being torn apart, but I kept my expression steady, refusing to let her see how her words affected me. Jessica's words grew sharper, taunting me even more. "Oh dear, did I upset you? I'm sorry, but it's natural for you to be a bit envious, isn't it? Your little sister, marrying a doctor and all," she said with a smirk. Her "I'm sorry" sounded empty, more like an accessory than an apology. I kept my face calm, unsure what she was planning but prepared to face it. Then Jessica leaned in close and whispered, "Big sis, I feel sorry for you, so I've come up with a great idea." I looked at her suspiciously. "A great idea? What is it?" With a satisfied smile, she replied, "You see, just watch." Jessica, in her elegant wedding dress, turned to the guests and raised a microphone. Suddenly, she announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a little surprise. My sister is here today. She may not have the highest education or be the youngest, but if there's anyone kind enough, would you please take her under your wing?" My face went red. "Jessica, what are you saying?" I exclaimed, shocked. Jessica continued, even louder, "Although she doesn't earn much and lives a modest life, is there someone here who can brighten her future?" People began to look at me, and Jessica's mock smile grew wider. My parents, normally so reserved, even joined in with, "Yes, please treat her kindly." This mocking comment from my own parents was the final straw. Rage bubbled inside. How could they humiliate me like this, at such a joyous occasion? Just then, the groom's colleagues, many of them doctors, stood up from their seats and began walking towards the exit. Surprised, the groom tried to stop them, but the hospital director, a dignified man, turned and addressed him firmly. "I'm sorry, but after the bride's remarks, we simply cannot stay. We'll be taking our leave." The groom, clearly distressed, hurried after them, pleading, "Please, wait. I apologize for her behavior. I'll take responsibility and ensure she realizes how inappropriate her actions were." Jessica looked at me, confused, as if unable to comprehend what was happening. I looked back at her with a calm, steady gaze and said, "Jessica, you soon understand just how terrible your actions were." She opened her mouth to argue, but for the first time, it was clear that things were no longer under her control. The hospital director, growing visibly upset, highlighted just how serious Jessica's actions were. He then revealed something that the groom was completely unaware of. "The real issue here isn't just her behavior," he said firmly. "Do you even know who her sister is?" The groom, looking confused, admitted, "No, I don't. I only met her sister for the first time today. All I was told is that she works in a factory and finished school early." The hospital director shook his head, frustrated. "Unbelievable. Her sister is actually a respected lawyer and she's our hospital's legal advisor." Hearing this, the groom's face showed total shock. He had no idea I was the hospital's legal advisor, and neither did Jessica or my parents, who stood there speechless. It turns out, the hospital where my sister's fiancé worked was the very hospital I advised. That's why the groom seemed so familiar with seeing him at hospital events. The other guests, recognizing me, were also taken aback by Jessica's rude comments. The groom, now visibly embarrassed, turned to Jessica and raised his voice. "What on earth is this? Because of your thoughtlessness, you've completely ruined my reputation." Jessica, stunned, stammered, "Wait, I didn't know my sister held such an important position." The groom, growing angrier, didn't accept her excuse. "Not knowing is no excuse. How can you speak so lightly and disrespectfully about your own sister? This behavior is appalling. Jessica, desperate for some sympathy, tried to explain. Please, Wady had a reason, but the groom cut her off, his tone final. I don't want to hear any excuses. This marriage is over. Jessica stood there, shocked, as his words sank in. Jessica collapsed to the floor, looking as pale as a ghost. In a fit of anger, the groom stormed out of the wedding hall, along with all the guests. As I turned to leave, I heard my sister's desperate voice behind me. Please help me, Emily. But I remained firm and looked at her with a serious expression. Help you? Why should I? You're in this situation because of your own actions, trying to get laughs by mocking others, and then acting like the victim when things go wrong is truly sad. Jessica, looking anxious and confused, pleaded, why are you being so harsh? If I'd known you were successful as a lawyer. Calmly, I replied, why would I need to tell someone who never even asks? I had already decided to cut ties after this wedding, and after seeing this, I feel more certain. I imagine you're disappointed that your engagement is over, but maybe you should start focusing on finding your next prospect. With that, I walked out confidently. Behind me, I could hear guests criticizing my sister and even our parents, who had counted on her marrying a doctor for a secure future. My parents were furious, scolding Jessica for the first time. Unable to handle their anger, she looked for sympathy, but I ignored her pleas. I never picked up her calls, and I cut off all contact with my family. Eventually, I heard that Jessica had quit her job. Now, without work, estranged from our parents, she spent her days alone at home. As for me, I was thriving, both at work and in my personal life, living peacefully without major problems. My family relationships may not have turned out well, but I've been fortunate to have great support from people around me. This stability wasn't random. It was the result of years of effort and self-investment. I had faced many challenges, but overcoming each one brought me to where I am today. Looking back, I appreciate the value of those struggles, and now I'm focused on living a fulfilling life, setting realistic goals, and keeping stress low.